If any of you follow the Voltron fanbase, you'll know that the show has become quite known for being bad, and there's countless videos on this. I'd say the Sin Squad's two-part series on the show sums it up best. But if you want a short answer, the writers didn't develop the relationships between the characters, and they also didn't develop a lot of arcs properly. There were lots of background factors and issues behind the scenes which caused this, but like I said, there's already a lot of videos and articles and such, and all sorts out there which look into this series. But something possibly alternative to that is this. I still love Voltron. ? I know the actual show, for many reasons, wasn't able to deliver the fantastic characters, meaningful storylines, and the powerful messages that it could have brought. But let me tell you something. This show has gotten dragged through the mud for having a toxic fanbase. Most noticeably for the shipping. And given the fact that the romance in this series is questionable, I think that the passionate shipping came from the fact that there's a huge lack of quality romance in the series and a huge quantity of romantically frustrated teenagers. But literally every fandom has toxicity. The only reason shows like Voltron Legendary Defender or Rick and Morty or Steven Universe might be more known for it than other shows and various media is down to popularity, making more of this toxicity shown to the public eye. Obscureness and crazy are going to stick out like a sore thumb against the mundane if it's publicized too much. To say a fanbase is toxic would probably need at least half of the fanbase to be like that in order for that to be a true stereotype. And that's very rare in a lot of fandoms. But obviously, the more striking or at this state memeable content is going to shine out more. That's why you have the whole Rick and Morty takes a very high IQ to watch type meme. That's a parody in itself, and that's become huge and taken very seriously as a thing one fan said. That was posted knowingly on a cringe Reddit. It's completely self-aware. But it'll stick out. That's why Jake Paul can be seen as the face of YouTube to an outsider instead of some of the far larger creators. The loud and the crazy are going to be way more memorable. I promise you, toxicity is just a part of all fandoms, but in some it's just harder to see. You just have to look for it, and with shows like these, it just gets presented to you. Ironically, a lot of toxic fandoms come from good shows, but this is an instance where there are objective flaws within the series that are hard to deny. And a toxic fanbase has come from that, but the Voltron fanbase isn't toxic itself, but there is a toxic part of it, like every fandom. I know that there are issues with this show, and I know they exist. I agree with the problems that there are. I don't like the show because I'm ignoring the problems. I like the show despite them. I know how badly messed up the show got because I know it had incredible potential. So while I'm bringing all the following stuff up, just know that I'm not blinded by this. I also think it's really sad to dismiss so much, though, and feel like you have to hate a show or anything to do with it. Of course, I think it's obvious that what happened with Voltron is going to ruin it and related things for some people. It just is. But I'm surely not going to let it ruin it for me. So with that being said, I want to talk about some of my favorite things to come out of the Voltron fandom. Number 1, AMVs. I know it sounds kind of stupid, but I love the music videos for the show. And I think the reason for that is because they make me feel how I think the show would have made me feel if it lived up to potential. The characters feel more real and more grown, and not to bring up shipping again, but as someone who just loves plants, I can honestly say that from a show perspective, it still would have been a stretch to make it canon. I think all of the ships would have really, because you kind of need to be friends on a base level if you're ever going to be more than friends. And the paladins and the other characters just aren't that. Although I've never been in a relationship, so don't at me on that. Talented accounts like Honestly Pretty Chill make the relationship with Katie and Lance feel true and powerful to me. People are brought to literal tears by these channels and videos and creations. Watching upbeat music videos with the main characters make me feel like I'm watching something so fun and like I'm seeing a show with strong friendships. Every time I see one in my recommended, I'm always amazed because I think if you showed an outsider these videos, they'd totally buy into the characters and their stories together. For me, they take what we envision for the characters, what they could have been, and bring it to life. The videos just have a huge morale and high spirit to them that I love them for. I guess you could say that they cause the emotions that the show just couldn't bring. I might link a few in the description, but honestly, just have a look at some of them. I don't think you'll be disappointed. The way they're edited together really sells the bonds between the characters to me and makes me more invested in their backstories. Because the videos are like 2 to 4 minutes long, they look more into the storylines than the actual show does. I'm not joking, things just seem to get announced in the show and then wrapped up in a few months or something, without much in between. Alright. Secondly, Hunk's character in general. Kind of a weird point to bring up, but I wanted to talk about it a little bit in these topics. So Hunk is a nice character. We all know this. I know that the members of Voltron and their growth are very watered down, but I love the idea of what they were going for with Hunk. There's sometimes characters in fiction like Hunk whose most noticeable trait is their kindness, which is a fantastic quality to have, but in real life it's not always as appreciated. I think this idea of being nice as being bad comes from the idea of being a Hufflepuff in a sea of Gryffindors, Slytherins, and Ravenclaws. This idea that being nice is easy and just something anyone could do, so it's really not that important. So a lot of these nice characters are cast aside in fiction for being boring, uninteresting. Most series would favor a story on Keith than Hunk, for example, because having a character being moody or somewhat rough like that is going to be more exciting to a media that wants to promote those type of stories. But I do think that there's a huge market for people who want less drama, less edge, and less of this in a protagonist. Voltron Legendary Defender does something which I'm going to refer to in the future as the sharpshooter technique from now on, where they blatantly have scenes where they say what the creators want their characters to be, instead of having the characters experience things and do things and make choices that show you what their personality is, what and why makes this character. There's, I think, 2 or 3 scenes like that where they kind of go around a room and say, Keith's the loner, I'm the brain, blah 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 blah. The world can never have enough nice people, but it's hard to not take it as an insult when it's portrayed as one of the most boring qualities. Now, I'm completely aware that Hunk as a character is also intelligent like Katie, funny like Lance when he's not making fat jokes, and headstrong when need to be because of his experiences as being a part of Voltron. But focusing more on this idea of nice characters, in general, if that's what your main trait is, like it is with Hunk sometimes, a lot of shows don't bother giving those characters screen time. Going back to the Harry Potter analogy again, because I think it well represents why nice is seen as an insult, both in shows and in real life. In the 5th Year Sorting Hat song, the lyrics says, Slytherin, we teach just those whose ancestry is purest. Said Ravenclaw will teach those whose intelligence is surest. Said Gryffindor will teach all those with brave deeds to their name. Said Hufflepuff, I'll teach you a lot, and treat you all the same. Treat you just the same. This isn't a direct quote, I don't think. Many people think this means that the Hufflepuffs are essentially leftovers, the people who had no pure blood, ambition, intelligence, or bravery. I think in this way, I feel like if your main quality is kindness, both in real life and otherwise, then it's easy to feel bad because a lot of us measure our worth in ourselves in our other attributes. If you're not brave, if you're not intelligent, not talented, not ambitious, just kind, then I understand why it can sting to be described like that. A lot of kids growing up would want to be a Keith or a Lance or a Shiro because even though they are very different, they seem like more complex individuals, and I don't think it's a big secret that Shiro was the head for a long time, literally, and Keith and Lance at his right arm, again, pretty literally. Even though Keith took main spot 99.9% of the time, because it's the Sheaf and Shiro show, to me, Pidge and Hunk were definitely represented as the bottom two in the Voltron team. Even though they were different in character, they were portrayed as the grunts, in my opinion. There was never any question on whether Hunk or Katie would have been bonded with the Black Lion and take a stand in Voltron's team like that. But Keith and Lance were talked about in that way numerous times, like they were the alpha males or something. I think this would stand out a lot more if Lance was as equally developed as Keith had. I think you'd notice that the show had unintentionally given them more importance from a ranking perspective. I guess that's why, despite all of it, I like the idea that there's another nice character in a show. And the arcs they did give him were great to a certain extent. Other than Lance, they gave all the characters motivation for sticking to fight in this huge galactic space war. But Hunk stuck out to me because it wasn't necessarily based on a tragedy. Pidge needed to find her family, something I've seen before, but I still love the idea of her story. Keith was a typical edgy loner emo boy, and guess what? He's an orphan. Again, something I've seen before, but that's fine. Shiro was involved from the beginning. He was a prisoner of the Galra and now has motivation to be involved and fight back. Also, Shiro's like 25, but had the attitude of a 40-year-old dad with a bone to pick, which I kind of appreciated. And Alora's entire life had been taken by the Galra, and she was keen to get revenge on that. And I think Karan's there to support Alora, but to be honest, I think he's just there for comedic value, I think. All of these motivations are thought out, and I appreciate them, but they all stem from this idea of revenge and saving people and things I've seen countless times. But Hunk gave me something I hadn't seen before in a main character in a series like this. Hunk has plenty of fear and reason to go home as soon as possible, but early season 1 he has a head-first experience with the Galra's effect on the universe. He meets a Balmeran named Shay who shows him kindness and compassion despite the danger. Hunk learns about the enslavement of hundreds of planets and sees the suffering behind it. Just by being on the Balmera, Hunk is immediately put into an unethical place. He knows that him coming to take the crystal and leave means him leaving these people in danger and continued oppression. This changes him because he makes a choice. Despite all, he makes the choice that he wants to help these people regardless of his personal fears. His emotional connection with Shay is the embodiment of his motivation, to save these people, to end the suffering. But unlike most characters, this might not necessarily be him trying to be brave. This is him being kind. We know this because in this episode, when he's on his own with only him to defend himself from a group of Galra robots, he surrenders immediately. He is not the stand main protagonist that most TV shows would try to make him into. In episode 7 of season 1, Hunk returns with newfound motivation, and he develops based on his kindness and sense of morality. He's still nice. He didn't suddenly get ounces of testosterone handed to him and become a He-Man warrior designed to save the day. He puts his kindness above all else. I also love him in season 6, where his character growth finally gets put to good use. I just love Hunk's character, and I think he's severely underrated. And I really want more characters motivated by kindness, I guess. Like Aang, why not? I just want more male characters that aren't stereotypically brave, just because. I could go on, but I think I'm going to leave my Hunk discussion here for now. So, I guess moving on. In the last month leading up to the release of Voltron Season 8 in December late 2018, there was a small challenge promoted on Tumblr which I saw, and it was a Voltron Positivity Month. Unfortunately, I don't think it got quite the publicity it needed to take off, but it was an effort to counteract the hate towards the writers, cast, and creators of the show. I like seeing people in the fandom see the hate and recognize that leading up to the end of Voltron, it had been known for so much hate. And I like that they made an effort to spread some positivity. The challenge involved things like complementing areas of the series and drawing ship art of ships you didn't necessarily ship, which brings me on to a final point, I guess. This isn't a top 10 video. It's not a case towards why Voltron is great. It's just a few things I liked. I didn't need it to be a big defender of the series, and I didn't need it to be a big defender for the hate. Here's the thing. This fanbase is talented, brilliant, incredible, amazing, show-stopping, spectacular. I want to show some of my favorite fan arts, which I've saved. I think there's so much that has come from this series that you don't have to associate it with the hate, even though it might be something that comes to mind for a lot of people. It's in every fandom. It's nothing new. I don't think Voltron has to be another show which drowns in the idea of everyone in it is down below all the moral barriers and we're just above them because we're kind, loving people. Because that's not the way it is. It's a huge minority of the fandom. And it doesn't matter what the show is because, it's just a stereotype. Of course, I'm definitely not the best person to try and voice this. I'm no professional in trying to be a public speaker on why fandoms are the way they are and how we should treat people, but I just think it's unnecessary. I don't have a conclusion, I don't think, but good and bad has come from Voltron. Everything is good and bad. I don't know. But don't go overboard with loving the show or hating the show. The internet seems to love absolutely obsessing over something or absolutely wanting to tear it to the ground. It doesn't have to be a big thing. I just don't want people to feel like they have to hate this series. You don't have to feel anger every time you see something slightly related to Voltron. I mean, if you love to hate the show, then by all means go ahead. But in my confusion of whether I was allowed to like the show or not, I realized it doesn't have to be so black and white. I'm going to put some more of my favorite things to come from this series in the description, but other than that, I don't think I have much else to add. I hope you liked what I had to say, and I hope you don't feel like you have to dismiss things so quickly.